So we are going to get started with the next section, which is a presentation I like to call the art of technical decision making. So thank you guys for coming. First off, I want to thank the organizers of Method Conference, Levi back here, and his wonderful wife helped put all this together. So thank you guys for your hospitality and having me here. Second, another little housekeeping thing. Our sponsors, go visit them. They're in the back. Go steal all their stuff. They don't want to take it home and they don't want to ship it home, so go take it. Without our sponsors, we can't do events like this, so please support them. So, who is this guy? My name is JD Hillen. I am a software engineer at Garmin in Kansas City. I have 3 philosophies in life, and those philosophies are code, coffee, and metal. I write code all day. I'm a builder, so I just write code all day. I hate sitting in meetings. I drink coffee all throughout the day. I'm shocked I don't have one right now, but I've been drinking like cappuccinos all morning, so I'm really there and ready to go. And I'm also a big metalhead. Listen to headphones all day. Try to go to as many concerts as I want to. Last concert I went and saw Whitechapel and Lorna Shore. Anybody into the deathcore scene? One dude? You're my guy, all right? So no, I try to go to a lot of concerts. I play guitar. I was in a band for a long time, but I'm also a tech nerd too. So anything that you'll see in our presentations today will be at links.jdhillen.com. There will be a QR code at the end if you don't want to type it in, but it's got all my socials. It's got all my presentation. It has all my videos. That is the hub. If you want to know anything about me, please go there. I'm also one Twitter follower away from 666 followers. So if somebody could take care of that today, that would be great. It actually happened a couple days ago, and a bunch of people unfollowed me. So, like, they think I actually believe this stuff? Come on. Anyway, but it's nice to be here in Springfield. I actually I met the love of my life here in Springfield about 2 months ago. This is Olivia. This is Livy. She's my sweet little baby. We adopted her about 2 months ago, and she sits on my lap while I code all day. And that makes me feel like less of a psychopath talking to myself at home because I work from home. But anyway, so let's get into what we're going to talk about. So this is a Boolean, right? Everybody knows what a Boolean is, right? Created by George Boole back in the early 19th century. It's an algebraic system for logic, or it was defined as an algebraic system of logic, and it's primarily associated with conditional statements, which allow for different actions by changing control flow depending on whether a programmer's specified Boolean conditions evaluates to true or false. I should have written that out better because it is a very poorly worded sentence. Like I said, personally, I love Booleans. They're either true or false, right? There's only 2 outcomes. But that's the problem, is that we don't live in a Boolean world, right? We don't live in a black and white world. We live in a world with many shades of gray, especially when it comes to technology, because everybody feels like they have their own way of doing things, correct? This is a quote by Henry Petroski. He is a professor, I believe, at Duke University. He's also a prolific author, teaches civil engineering and history at Duke. But he's also an American engineer that's specializing in failure analysis. And I really love this quote. It says, "Successful engineering is all about understanding how things break or fail." And I really find this true, is that your system is only as good as how it fails. Okay, quick show of hand. How many people have taken out Prod Server before? Come on, there's more of you. So at Garmin, I did it on my first week. Yeah, I YOLO'd it and just sent a push to production, and yeah, it broke. So I actually work on the team that deals with account management. So do we have any Garmin users here? No? We make watches. They're way cooler than Apple's. They don't have all the features, but you have an iPhone for that, right? So anyway, Where was I going with that? Anyway, the successful engineering is all about understanding how things break or fail. So what is decision making? Simply put, decision making is the process of selecting an option from several alternatives. Business decisions are driven by the need to achieve certain business goals, following structured methodologies while being dynamic and continuous. And business decision making, usually involves various steps, including defining objectives, data collection, analysis, problem solving, evaluation, implementation, and monitoring of outcome. All these things we do at Garmin. So does anybody recognize this? If you took Psychology 101, this is like one of the rudimentary graphics that they show you. Anyway, it's called the RPD. It's the recognition prime decision-making model. So it kind of goes in this circular, and all decision makings are kind of circular. The first one, we have the cue, which is a pattern. A pattern is recognized in a situation. So like, oh, I've seen this before, right? I recognize this. Second is the information and memory. So this pattern is matched with a piece of information in the associative memory system. So, hey, do you remember this? Okay. Analysis, the third step. So that takes place to determine if it makes sense or if it will work. And then ultimately you have the decision. So the decision is proposed or made up assuming that it passes phase 3. People think this is like, this takes forever. This is fractions of seconds. You do this all day long, okay? That's great, but what is technical decision making? So technical decision making is the art of choosing a technology, tool, framework, programming language, service, architecture, or pattern to solve a problem scientifically. The importance is placed upon the technology integration with your business processes. Ultimately, technical decision making is one of the most important aspects of software engineering. And if you don't think that you're in charge of technical decision making, you're wrong. How many people work on teams, like with other people? Like, why, as programmers, why do we work with teams? Shouldn't we just work on our own and just live in our little holes and code? At least that's what I like doing anyway. Also, making decisions is agnostic to your role and is something that you have already experienced or will experience as part of your journey in software development. How many people are just kind of starting out in software engineering? A couple people? Awesome. How long?
I've been learning for over 2 years now.
Awesome. Okay, cool. What about you? Awesome. Even better. Do you go to school here? Awesome. Very cool. This guy, he raised his hand.
1 month into my job.
Awesome. Well, you're doing a great job, and I love it. Anyway, technical decision making, it can go a long way to make your life easier, simpler, fast, or slow, or complex, or miserable in the future. Okay? Things to talk about for technical decision making, it starts with business requirements, right? What is your application or your website? What's the point of it, right? Is it a tool? Is it there to make money? Is it, like for me at Garmin, is it a way for users to manage their accounts? You got to figure out what the business requirements are first. And then it continues with the development of policies, processes, systems, and applications to support those requirements. How many people don't document their work? Ooh. As a person that came on to a technical job where literally everything was documented, it was almost too much information. They were giving me business requirements from 10 years ago on systems that we don't even support anymore. But the documentation is still there, so better read it. Continues with the development of policies and processes. And then it's also responsible for security and compliance. Security and compliance is a huge issue, especially at Garmin. During COVID, I believe it was the first year of COVID, Garmin actually got hacked and their entire system was down for 3 days. Nobody could use GPS, nobody could use it. It was a ransomware thing, I think. I wasn't there when it started. But security and compliance is a huge issue, especially if you work for a company that has millions and millions of users all over the world, devices all over the world. You have to be able to manage those and make sure that the security and compliance is in place. And lastly, it defines the architecture and is solely responsible for the implementation, maintenance, and operations of the system's infrastructure. Okay. So when it comes to technical decision making, there are really 4 methods. First, we have the command. So the command method of decision making is one where decisions are made without discussion or input from others. Like solo developers? Anybody solo? Yeah, do whatever you want. You can literally do whatever you want. Doesn't matter. But if you're working on a team, this can have complications with your team. If you just implement a new way of doing something and you don't document it, you just push it out, this could cause problems down the line. And we're kind of actually experiencing something like that right now with our team. So anyway, that's the command method. Basically, is one person in charge, they're making the decisions. Then we have the consult method. So the consult method involves taking input from others, but ultimately the final decision-making power is retained by one individual. Usually it's a team lead or an architect or something like that. But they want everybody's opinion, right? They're not just mandating, hey, you have to do it this way. So the consult method, where it's not exactly a full democratic process, it at least makes people feel more involved with the decision-making process, and especially on a team of technical people where everybody wants to build cool stuff, being able to get those inputs. Because, you know, has anybody, okay, so I grew up in marketing and advertising, right? I worked with a lot of people that were like, I'm the idea guy. That's all I do. I come up with ideas. Well, we all do that. We all have ideas, right? We all have better ways of doing things, okay? It's not just I'm the idea guy. Ask the guy that's sitting quietly in his desk, coding by himself and just burning through tickets. Like that guy knows some things, right? He has ideas too. So that's the consult method. Then we have vote. So the vote method, highly collaborative process, and involves getting everyone's opinion on the team, but ultimately everybody's voting for it. And whoever comes up or whatever vote gets won, that's the method they use, right? Doesn't necessarily take everybody's information into account, but at least people feel like they have a say. And although voting is, like I said, the democratic process of decision making, it can still leave a large group of people feeling bitter and against a decision. You know, maybe there's a reason why you feel like they should have done something different. It's the same thing. And then lastly is the consensus method. Okay, so the consensus method is where all involved parties present different perspectives and openly discuss alternatives until they reach an agreement, right? So you have to have buy-off from everybody. This can be time-consuming. This can, you know, they can turn into heated arguments at point if people are really passionate about it. But this also decreases the risk of those technical decisions that you're making, and it also makes you readily adaptable to all stakeholders. So that's the consensus method, getting everybody involved, and everybody has to agree. So some other factors that influence technical decision making, like I said, business requirements, got to know what you're building. Resource allocation, this is a big thing. You know, how many people do you have on your team? What project are you currently working on? Do you need to staff up for that project? Are there, you know, enough people working on that project to get it done in the timeline that is proposed? And that leads me to the next one, which is time constraints. How long do we have to build this? You know, do we have months? Do we have years? Do we have a week? You know, who knows? Then risk tolerance. What impacts are these technical decisions going to have in terms of maintainability, in terms of code bloat, in terms of being secure? What are some of the risks that are involved with implementing a new system or changing a way we do things? And lastly is cognitive bias. Do your coders actually know how to build what you're asking them to build? Are they experienced in whatever framework or subsystem that you're using? Do they know about it? So cognitive bias is a real big one, especially when working in teams. So there's also some new factors that influence technical decision making. First one being the increased dependence on technology. I mean, there's people on their phones, there's people on their laptops. We're all dialed in, right? I just got my kid a phone. He's 12, and he doesn't use it very often. It's so weird. Like he's a baseball kid. That's all he wants to do is just play. He's played 4 baseball games today, and I sat in the speaker room watching all of them. But like I said, he's not that into technology yet, But there are people that live their entire life online, and having that increased dependency on technology can really impact your technical decision making. Are people comfortable with the way that our app works? Is it a UX issue? Is it a common practice? Things like that. Next, you have changing roles of your IT department. IT departments are not just guys that fix printers. They're not anymore anyway. And especially with a company like Garmin that have hundreds of thousands of technical people all over the world, someone in Cluj, Romania, which is one of our partner teams, they're not flying to the U.S. to fix our printers. So, and then lastly, growing expertise of end users. I mean, how many people just download an app and be like, oh, I know how to use that, right? Because it's the exact same. It's set up the exact same way as all your other apps, right? There's a search bar, there's tabs at the bottom, common UX practices. But the problem is that our users are becoming experts at this. They don't want surprises. They don't want, things that are different. They just want the similar feeling. So that also, are you going to throw a wrench into how your users operate with your application because of their growing expertise? So this leads me to context is king when making technical decisions. Meaning that the circumstance that forms the setting of an idea in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. Again, you got to make sure that some decisions are more important than others, right? So let's take a look at a low stake technical decision, right? We want to build a website. What framework are we going to use, right? Correct answer is Vue, okay? Just for anybody question, it's Vue. But I will tell you the reason why I say Vue. I'm a big proponent of open source software, right? All of these are open source, but Vue is community driven, right? There's no big company pushing Angular forward like Google is, or React like the way Meta is, right? Vue is, I still see them as like these kind of coding pirates out there, and like the community's just kind of doing whatever they want to do. They take the best of all of this stuff and implement it into something that I think is really elegant. And there's something really cool about that. So that's the reason I use that. Now, I also have friends that are big React people, and they tell me that Vue is garbage, and I tell them that they're wrong. But that's their opinion, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, doesn't matter what you choose. Your users don't care what your application is built in. They don't. So we'll step it up a little bit. This is the Garmin GTN 700 XI. Kind of a mouthful, right? But what this is a device that lives in planes, primarily small Cessnas and things like that. But it's a flight path navigator, right? So what is the context if this device fails, right? You're in the air, right? You're flying a plane. but you can't see where you're going. Are you going to die? Well, number went up a little bit, maybe, but it's relatively lower risk, right, if that fails. Also, they don't fail. But what would happen if that instrument failed? And then lastly, we're going to raise the stakes a little higher. This is a pacemaker, right? What happens if this fails? You literally die, right? Technology on that has to be spot on, period. Or like literally people's lives are at stake. Like the stuff we work on, our lives at stake? Probably not. But it can get to this level because we are such a technology integrated society. I mean, even yesterday, I had to pay with my card and it said to tap, right, on the card at the little kiosk, tap to pay. Didn't work. So she's like, all right, try it again. So I tried it again, didn't work. She's like, well, try the chip. So I inserted the chip, didn't work. She's like, okay, well, now you got to insert the chip 3 different times, and then once that fails, then you can slide it. I'm like, can't I just put like a device in my hand that just like pays everything? You know, that like I had that thought yesterday. So that is an example of a bad decision. So don't do that. But when we're making decisions with what technologies we're going to use or what services we're going to try, there comes a point where we're going to try a bunch of different things. So let's look at this graphic real quick. It's kind of hard to see in the back, but this is a graphic of all the different image types that you can use for your project, right? I went to art school, okay? Back in the day, there was bitmaps, PNGs, and JPEGs, and that's it. When I built this presentation, I didn't even know what these were, okay? But they're different imaging formats, right? So if you just want to put an image on a page, you got to go through this whole thing to figure out what type of image you want to use, right? Well, if your company made that technical decision, like, oh, we use PNGs for literally everything. Okay, then use PNGs for everything, right? But then somebody sneaks in an SVG somewhere. It's like, okay, well now we need to go back to the drawing board. Well, not necessarily. It depends on the context, right? So like I said, we're going to be looking at alternatives when making technical decisions. You're going to be looking at things like Google. You're going to be looking at Stack Overflow, talking to other developer friends. Hell, if you go on Twitter, and yes, I still call it Twitter. If you go to Twitter, and I'm sure there's a thread with a video and some influencer wanted to tell you all about how to drop database tables with a single line of JavaScript or something. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But there are plenty of things out there for you to look at and see like, oh, has someone already solved this problem before? That's one of the great things of the internet. You can make sure it's that queue response, right? You're like, oh, has somebody done this before? Let's go investigate, okay? Next step, we're gonna talk prototyping. My last job that I worked was actually a big design shop, and it was a lot of experimental stuff. So we would sit around a table and we'd be like, can we do this? And you know, our arrogance as programmers, like, hell yeah, we could do this. This is awesome. And then like you start getting into, you're like, oh shit, this is actually like really difficult to do. But we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't taken the time to actually prototype something. Like I said, hard facts are always better than speculation. Knowing something works and then convincing other people to implement it is a lot easier than just saying, I want to do it my way because I said so, right? There's no evidence there. So whenever possible, creating prototypes and proof of concepts will enable the team to gain a deeper understanding of the problem and the solution that's proposed. Going back to existing evidence, so documented usage from the outside world is especially useful when analyzing libraries and frameworks. Has anybody seen that graphic? And it's like it's a bunch of little boxes, and it's like how the internet is built. And there's one little box at the bottom, and it says like, this one package has been maintained by a coder in Nebraska for the last 30 years. That's terrifying, right? That your entire infrastructure is built on one guy's code? That's scary. But anyway, being able to document existing evidence, especially on things like Stack Overflow or bug reports or things like that. And so when analyzing alternatives, we want to consider both positive and negative evidence to build a better understanding for the proposed solution and its isolated risks. So, prior experience. So prior experience is kind of good and bad for team members, right? Because team members can be biased. They can be like, oh, well, I used that at my last job and I didn't like it. Okay, well, that's not a good enough excuse to not use something, right? Just because you don't personally like it doesn't mean it's not going to solve the problem, right? So a better way of saying that is, instead of saying, in my experience, library ABC is bad, we could say, we use library A and C to parse text from business cards, and we found that the accuracy was less than 60%, right? If you're building an app that transposes numbers from business cards or text at all, but the accuracy was less than 60%, that's a hard number, right? That's something you can prove, right? So that's a much better way to express that prior experience than just saying, well, I just think it's bad. Except for React, because React is bad. And then when everything else fails, in absence of a clear winner, we first need to decide whether any of the solutions proposed are good enough for the issue that we're trying to solve. Maybe it's just a patch thing. Maybe it's just a solution for the next 3 weeks, and then you're going to take it out anyway because it's under a feature flag. That's a possibility too. But alternatively, for smaller or less important problems, we can choose a solution which is most popular with the team, right? You can go through those 4 methods, figure out what everybody wants to do in the absence of a clear winner. And lastly is managing team feelings. So take others into account. I think a lot of people pass over other team members, or they don't take into account their feelings on things. Since making these decisions can cause repercussions on the team for picking a specific solution, the more controversial the decision, the more likely it is to affect the team's mood. Your people are your most important asset, right? Keep them happy, keep them engaged. Without people, your company is nothing. Without people, your product is nothing. I'm sorry. I still believe that. Even with all the AI stuff going on these days, I still believe that people are the core of the business. Period. Okay, so I've kind of come up with this 8-step decision-making strategy. I want to share it with you. You don't have to write it all down now because there's a summary slide at the end of it. You can just take a picture of it. But first is investigate the situation in detail, okay? Know all the ins and outs of your program. What is the issue? What can it impact? The implication of our business decisions. Is this a technical decision? Is this a coding syntax decision? Like what is the actual core of the problem? Identify that first. Second, you also have to create a constructive and inclusive environment. Like I said, your people are your most important assets, so keep them happy. Make sure your team is can dynamically support a constructive and inclusive environment, so make sure all your people are cool, Make sure everyone is heard, make sure everyone is empowered, and make sure everyone has the resources they need. I think that's a big thing with a lot of companies where they're like, oh, we want to try this new tool, but oh, it's a little more expensive. Like, does anybody use Polypane? It's a browser. No? Anybody ever heard of Polypane? Okay, so if you do front-end development work, like specifically front-end development work with responsive design, use Polypane. It is a paid service. It is a paid application, but it's 100 times better than coding something in Firefox or Google Chrome. Just the features they have, the multiple windows that you can have at different positions so you can make sure that your CSS works. I campaigned at my office to get a subscription to this, and so I wrote down these are the reasons why I need this. It helps with development. Yes, it costs this, but it improves, my productivity by 25% or whatever number I made up, and they gave it to me, right? So making sure that your people have the tools and the software and the knowledge that they need. Maybe they need some training. Maybe they need to come to a conference and learn some stuff. Invest in your people. Third, generate good alternatives. Okay, so once you know the problem inside and out, and you have all your resources set, look at what else can solve the problem, right? Like I said, go back to research, go into Google, go into OpenAI, asking friends, you can dig around on Reddit if you want. I wouldn't advise that, but if you want to do that, that's a possibility too. There's a huge coding community on Reddit. Who knew? Number 4, explore your options. So this is the time to start building. This is that prototyping phase, right? Get off your ass, put some music on, get on your laptop and sit there for 6 hours and don't move, right? Build something, right? Get those prototypes going. This could be as simple as a small syntax change or a full stack rewrite. This could be, where was I going? Oh, so how many people have prototyping built into their workflow? Like allowed at work, right? Couple. Google has this rule called the 80-20 rule. Has anybody heard of that? Where 80% of your time you're working on Google stuff, and then 20% of your time you're working on whatever passion project you want to work at. We don't have a specific rule for that where I work or previous jobs, but I take the time. I make the time, right? I do it at least an hour a day, just doing something fun, right? I like web animations. I'm gonna date myself. I'm an old school Flash developer. Does anybody remember Flash? Hell yeah. Flash, I'm sorry, Flash was badass. It was the coolest time in the internet. Like, everything's so plain and bootstrapped. I don't like it anymore. So, like I said, explore your options, find out what else is out there, and just try to build something cool, right? Number 5, select the best solution. Weigh your options, okay? What, is this decision, or is going with framework A going to increase productivity by 20%, or is it going to decrease productivity by 20% because none of our developers know how to use that framework, right? Just, again, weigh your options. Not all options have to have positive only outcomes, too. There could be negative outcomes that could actually end up benefiting your project. Evaluate your plan. So that now is the time, now that you have your best solution, now is the time to implement it, and let's talk with your team, right? How long is this going to take? Do the business requirements have a time box for this? Do the developers we have know how to implement the options? Do we have the infrastructure to support this? So once you have your plan, you need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. Lastly, communicate your decision. This is the biggest one for me. People that work on teams that don't communicate are an ineffective team member. Okay, we all have to work at the same pace, at the same time, on the same project, right? This is elementary school. This is one big group project, right? And there's always that one guy that didn't do anything. Well, tough shit. Get on board, get with the team. This is what we're doing. Lastly, take action, right? Do something with it. Nothing's going to change unless you actually take action. So these are the 8-step decision-making strategies. If you need to take a photo of that, go ahead. But in conclusion, we can say that making technical decisions is a balancing act where we follow factors with the following factors that need to be considered: the size and gravity of the problem, the risks associated with implementation, the time it takes to analyze these risks, the team members' feelings toward the choices available, and most importantly, it needs to be a collaborative effort between all engineers on the team, especially when the decision to be made is fundamental to your architecture of the system and directly influences their work. But with all these decisions, we do have to talk about decision fatigue, right? Does anybody notice, like, toward the end of the day, you're just done, right? I think this guy's done already. I don't blame him, man. It's been a long day. But as your level of responsibility increases, so does the multitude of choices you have to make in a day, right? And it's estimated that the average adult makes over 35,000 conscious decisions a day. I can barely remember what I did yesterday, let alone try to remember all this technical stuff, right? So there are ways of combating this. I'll go through it here in a sec. This is another quote. This is by Simon Sinek. If anybody has been on LinkedIn in like the last 3 years, you know who this guy is. Okay, he's the guy that he's got a bunch of books and he's an influencer and all this stuff. But this is a really good quote. It says, "There is no decision that we can make that doesn't come with some sort of balance or sacrifice." And I really feel that's true. And I feel that it's true in all aspects, not just in a technical world. This happens in your relationships. This happens in your professional life, in your personal life, everything. Everything comes with some kind of trade-off or sacrifice. There always has to be balance. So ways to combat decision fatigue. Prioritize important decisions early in the day, unless you're not a morning person. I personally am not a morning person. My mornings are for reading bullshit emails and making sure my PTO request went through. Okay? My work doesn't start until afternoon. It doesn't. And I tell my managers that too. Like, I'm just garbage in the morning. But I know that about myself. So I prioritize those important decisions to be right at that time when I know that I'm my most effective. And this is a process. It takes a while to learn. But it also, you have to be really knowledgeable about yourself and what you're capable of and what you're willing to do that day. You know what I mean? So limit choices with goals. Goals are, I could talk all day about goals, but goals are not an effective way of making a choice. Goals are something you work towards, right? Goals are something you work towards. But it is a way to keep you motivated. So that's an interesting take on it. Create daily routines. I have a checklist on my phone that pops up every single morning with all the steps that I have to do to go through my morning. I'm also very OCD, and I live my life by lists, very type A. So if it's not on the list, it's not getting done. Plain and simple. Delegate what you can. If you know that your yard needs mowed, but you don't have the time to do it because you're working on technical stuff, hire somebody to mow your yard. Okay? Delegate stuff. You don't have to just keep loading up your brain with all of this stuff. Like, there's a reason you work on a team, right? There's a reason you work with other developers. It's to lighten the load. Okay? Use tools like decision matrices, pros and cons lists. Pros and cons lists are awesome. I love making pros and cons lists. Avoid making decisions when you're tired. That's a good one. I've never made a good decision about my life like half asleep. You know what I mean? Minimize distractions. That's another big one for me. I don't like a lot of clutter in my office. My office is very bare. There's not it's not full of toys and movie posters and stuff. Like, no, it's my computer, my desk, and a black room. That's all it is. Because I know if I have all that stuff in there, like, I'm gonna mess with it. Like, oh, I haven't played my guitar in a couple days. Maybe I get that out, and then 2 hours later, you haven't done a damn thing, right? So minimize distractions. And that leads me right into streamlining your environment. Okay, where is the most efficient way or place that you work? Right? Is it at home? Is it on the couch? Is it in bed? I do not advise doing it in bed. But those are simple things. Making sure that you have your coffee before you start coding. Making sure that your phone is plugged in away or, put on silent or something. So it's minimizing distractions. All these things can help combat that decision fatigue. But there is one more thing. You're going to fuck up. Sorry. You're going to make the wrong decision. You're going to screw up. And you have to embrace it. Period. It's the only way we get better, right? Have you ever started coding something and then just immediately abandoned it? Yeah, we all have, right? For something better, for something more eye-opening or more engaging. I actually got in trouble for this slide because I gave this presentation at Garmin, and all around the screen were all these Garmin logos, and then somebody took a picture of it and posted it, and they wrote, "This is the best slide I've ever seen in my life." And I immediately got an email from HR saying, "Please take that down." But the reason I say that is because it is kind of a wake-up call, right? You're just going to have to embrace that you're going to fail. A little story. I have two boys, 12 and 8, almost 9. They are obsessed with baseball, okay? I did not grow up a jock. I was the skinny, much fatter now, but skinny metalhead, like computer nerd. Didn't play sports, didn't do anything. They got all of that from their mother's side, and that's all they want to do is play baseball, okay? And over the last year, I have absolutely fallen in love with the sport. Absolutely fallen in love. I have seen so many baseball games this year, it's sickening, okay? And my Royals are out. Like I said, I'm from Kansas City. My Royals are out. I feel bad, but my boys' seasons aren't over. And what I learned in this last year is that baseball is a game, it's not a game of win or lose. It's a game of failure and how you deal with it, okay? The best baseball players in the world that are in the Hall of Fame have an average batting average of, 300? You know, you're striking out way more than when you're actually getting hits, right? What does that do to you mentally? And I've watched these kids. I've watched these kids on the field. They cry. They throw their helmet when they strike out. They get huffy and puffy when they get tagged because they don't know how to deal with that failure, right? Everybody was counting on them. Everybody on that team was rooting for him to score. But they got tagged out, and they let everybody down, right? How do you pick yourself up from that? And that's what I learned about that sport. And that's the reason why I leave this slide on here, is because you're going to screw up. It's just a matter of time. You just need to be able to, make a conscious effort to pick yourself up and do something better the next day. So, this is going to be the last slide, and it's my advice to you is just take action, right? Nothing gets done without actually taking action. For example, I had an idea for an app the other day. And what's the first thing that you do when you have an idea for an app? Now, you go buy the URL. You got to lock that down first, right? I bought the URL. Have I done anything with it? Nope. Haven't done a thing. But I have pages and pages and pages of notes. Just little ideas, little things I can do with it. I don't want to reveal what it is now because I'm actually kind of on my farewell tour for a little while. I do a lot of speaking engagements. I usually do about 30 to 40 a year. I've done a lot of conferences over the past year. And just like musicians that have been out on the road, I've been out on the road for the last 6 years. So it's time to me to hunker down and write a new album, right? And that's what I'm going to be doing with this new project. I don't want to go on it, but I'm actually taking action, taking a break from speaking engagements for a while, solely to work on this project just because I find it so interesting. And it sucks because I don't get to go to events like this. I don't get to interact with people. I don't get to, speak to people. But I view this as more important right now, so I'm taking action. I'm sacrificing something so I can take action on this. So, action is the foundational key to all success. And with that, I thank you. This is, like I said, if you enjoyed the presentation, please scan the code. It's got all the slides in there. Also has all my socials in there. Please follow me. Would love to interact with everybody. Again, want to thank everybody at Method for having me. I really appreciate it. I guess since we finished up a little early, I want to do some discussion stuff. Does anybody have any questions? I saw your hand in the back.
First, I'm your 666 follower.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, all right. You don't get anything for that.
I love that you linked the presentation at the beginning again. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, a lot of times I look back like 6, 12 months, and decisions that were made, it's clear what the decision was, but the why behind it sometimes gets lost.
Right. Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that, and how do you encapsulate that when a decision's made?
That's why I brought up documentation. Writing down the why is extremely important, even more important than just the how to do it, you know? Because having that reasoning why at the end of the day, be like, oh yeah, I did make this decision for this reason, here we go. You know what I mean? Not having that documented can bring up complications, can bring up arguments, you know? Like I said, keep your people happy and healthy and just document everything. Yep.
So earlier I rose my hand because I don't really write documentation.
Okay.
But do commit messages count as documentation? Because I agree.
If they're good commit messages. If they're like, I changed this on this line because of this, yeah, totally fine. But if you're like, fix stuff, push, like that's, you know, that's not good documentation. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just have one question.
Sure.
The decision-making process. You outlined like consult, consensus as 2 different strategies. One of the issues that I sort of struggle with is like a fledgling manager, if you will.
Okay.
I had this employee we just hired. He's really good now, but when he first started hiring, it was hard to motivate him to contribute his thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I knew, he was sort of a newbie, so there's certain environmental things about that you don't want to be judged or anything. But
right.
Encourage them. Would encourage like new employees or really just people that you want to hear what they say, but they don't feel confident. Even if you ask them, right? I even ask them, "What do you think?" And you go, "Well, that works for me." Yeah. I'm just curious if you have any strategies that might pull out, thoughts from people. It's not weird. Sorry.
So, my first reaction to this, because I really identify with your employee that you're talking about. Because when I first came to Garnet, this is my first big corporate big boy job, right? I've always worked at indie design firms. I worked at a brewery for a couple years doing tech stuff. I have a very non-traditional way into tech, right? So I really identify with your employee because he's new. Maybe he doesn't think that he knows everything about this. And especially when I started at Garmin, I didn't know shit about their systems, right? Had never worked with certain systems before. Also, Jenkins is terrible. But systems like that where when I worked on the indie side, it was just if it works on my machine, it works everywhere. Let's go, So there might be a little bit of imposter syndrome going on there. But at the end of the day, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Employees are going to be as motivated as they want to be, right? For me, example, I just had my employee evaluation a couple days ago. And, they asked, it's all this, corporate lingo of where do you see yourself in 5 years? And, how would you handle this situation? And I just wrote off I'm working on my mental health right now. Work is not my top priority. I was just honest with them. And you know what? They said that's the most honest answer they've ever gotten in one of these employee reviews, is that I don't care. I'm perfectly comfortable and happy where I am, right? But my work is not my 100% priority. Maybe that's an issue. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of outside factors, but it also depends on where that person is in their career, right? If they're young, maybe they're hungry, maybe they want to advance, maybe they want to get more money, more recognition, you know, or maybe it's just a means to an end, you know? It could be a multitude of things. But like I said, do your research. Ask them. Just talk to them. You'd be surprised how honest they'll be with you. Yeah. Because you don't get that a lot in work. You know, your boss actually coming up to you and be like, hey, how's it going? That rarely happens, right? Yep. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Did I answer that all right? Okay, cool. Awesome.
So we talk a lot about how to make decisions, obviously.
Right.
I think you covered that.
Yeah.
At one point.
I think so. A couple times.
But you also talk about the importance of action.
Yeah.
And sometimes those two things are very much in conflict.
Absolutely.
We sit down and we overthink about the problem. to
Absolutely.
where We're actually becoming counterproductive.
Yeah.
How do you draw
How do I what?
How do you draw the line between no, we need more planning and more decision making, and we just need to hit the ground running and put some code on the page?
Okay. I think it depends on a couple different factors. One, the time boxing thing. You know, how long do we have to implement this? Again, the cognitive biases. Can we implement it? Do we have the structure, the infrastructure to do this? You have certain things like that. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question? I just want to make sure I'm covering it. Drawing the line.
Yeah, between when do we stop making decisions and when do we try?
More action, right? I'm more of the mindset of put on a helmet and run head first into traffic kind of guy, because I just want to see if it'll work. Like when I first started programming, I got one of those aha moments. You ever get those? Like you're coding something, you're like, oh, it worked. Yeah. I live for those moments, okay? But it happens every once in a while where you don't get those. And you get bored and you get, a little apathetic and stuff. But I get all of those aha moments from just putting in my headphones and trying to build something cool, right? Everybody else be damned. I'm just gonna see this out. And however long it takes me, that's how long it takes me. But I'm gonna try to figure this out. And if I get stuck, I'm also, not so arrogant to not ask for help too. But that also comes with a team dynamic. So I would tell people to just start building. Doesn't matter what it is, just start figuring something out because it's gonna change. It's gonna change down the road. Some other issue is gonna pop up. A new UX thing is gonna come out where everybody has to use this. You know what I mean? That's the cool thing about software. Software is never done. It's never done. You never just build something and you're like, yep, good enough, done. Did I answer that okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Cool. Dude with purple hair, what's your favorite band? I gotta know now.
Funny enough, because probably right now it's Lawrence Road, so I was so triggered.
Dude, they were so good live.
I wanted to go see KC last night.
Oh, they're coming to KC on I think the 18th, something like that. I get it. So anyway, I will be hanging out for a little while. I do actually have to head home around 5 o'clock today because I have more baseball to go to. So if anybody wants to hang out, talk, ask questions, anything, I'll be around. But anyway, I want to thank you very much for your time and your consideration, and I appreciate you coming to my talk. Have a great day.